World Class, Jim Crockett Promotions, Big Time Wrestling, Mid-South. $2 Late Fee presents Territory Marks with Paul London and Zach Schaefer. The show that celebrates matches from the glory days of professional wrestling. From one man who lives it and another man who loves it.
Weighing 271 pounds, Jesse the Body Ventura.
Territory Marks is back with another action-packed episode. This is not Jesse the Body Ventura, but this is a guy who grew up in the Midwest, so I got a little bit of that accent. Paul London, we got a very special guest with us today. We're doing the crossover episode for Podcasting After Dark and Territory Marks. And here we are, Paul. We got Corey joining us from Podcasting After Dark. How the hell are you, Corey?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I hope I can bring anything to the table with these discussions.
Are you kidding? You're the Crusher, Corey. You're Crusher Corey from the Podcasting After Dark territories.
Paul, would you say that Corey looks a little bit like Larry the Axe Hennig from the AWA days?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think there's a combination of wrestlers. You know, there's a little bit of one-man gang.
Oh, yeah, that'll work. Not Hakeem.
A little bit of Bam Bam, whose birthday is today, September 1st, as we record this. Bam Bam Bigelow's birthday.
Oh, no, rest in peace and happy birthday to one hell of a guy.
Absolutely.
Can we do a rest in peace to Sid Vicious, who just passed away this week, too?
Yeah, absolutely. Sid Vicious, man, this is kind of a sad little tale because people were asking, would you have any Sid stories? And I vaguely remember meeting him at a convention. And, you know, he knew I was a worker. I think he might have even known who I am, but he was extremely nice. You know, he always heard that for the most part, he was always a very polite guy. So just this past Friday, I had just flown in from New York because I had a show there my Thursday night. And then I came in and I had another show Friday night. And I was running off of being awake for probably over 30 something hours straight. And I was tired and I was already at the building. I got there early to avoid traffic and being late, even though the show started late. Gotta love indie wrestling.
Right.
And so I'm scrolling through my phone, and you know how sometimes there's suggestions for people like, oh, someone you follow the same people, like you might like, you know what I mean? So Sid, his icon pops up and it's like his page, and it says follow back on my, so he was already following me, and I was like, oh my God. And I followed him back. I mean, you know, and I sent a message to possibly whoever reads his account, but
maybe his son.
Man, yeah, I'm not sure, but I was just like, like, man, that's tough. Like, I would have loved to have picked his brain about so many things.
Well, you know, we just covered a match that he had in the territories with Kerry Von Erich a couple months back.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a connection to the match we're going to speak about here shortly. In that, you know, it obviously we love Memphis wrestling. The match we're covering today emanates from the wonderful city of Memphis, and Sid was from West Memphis, Arkansas, just across the river.
Right. They just put up a billboard in his memory, I guess, there.
Yeah.
Which I saw a picture of that.
Not for nothing, Paul. I'll run this by you, but and just kind of set up everybody who's listening. You might have heard me before on the show or whatever, but I'll just kind of give a little backstory myself. I never grew up really, watching wrestling on my own, but every one of my best friends were huge wrestling fans, so wrestling would always be in my periphery. We were also huge comic book nerds growing up, and Paul, I don't know if you remember the Wizard magazine for the comic books and stuff like that, and they would, yeah. it was like, like a monthly mag, just comic book mag. But they would have a really fun section where they would do like fan castings, like always for comic book stuff. And it never made that casting, but I always wanted Sid Vicious to be Sabretooth. I always thought he had that perfect Sabretooth vibe. Now, I think Triple H would have made a good Sabretooth, but I always thought he was kind of short. I think Sid Vicious would have been a fantastic Sabretooth. And of all the wrestlers, he was probably in my top 10 favorite that I actually really freaking... It also probably helped because I had very curly blonde hair when I was a kid, too. So I kind of, I was like, oh, he looks like me a little bit,
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, oddly, I never even thought of him as Sabretooth, but when you think about it, he's just like he had a hairy muscle body, and but it was like the short curly kind of hair that looks almost like fur.
Yeah.
But he would have made a really great Sabretooth, but ironically, man, Sid, he spent a lot of his more successful years, obviously with WWF, but there's he did spend a great amount of time in WCW as well, obviously before that. But there's a chance, I don't know, I'd have to go and look at the timeline, but there's a chance that Sid was at WCW when Tyler Mane was at WCW.
Yeah, the Sabretooth that we actually did get, yeah.
He came back to WCW, and they probably did cross paths at that time.
Right, yeah, so...
I'd say Sid could play a Sandman too. He kind of looks like a little bit like a Sandman, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crickets. Corey's like, no, wrong.
I didn't mind Spider-Man 3. We digress. That was a cool Jesse the Body Savage impersonation, by the way, Zach, early on.
Oh, thanks. I try. I was trying to hone in on
Randy Ventura.
Yeah, a little bit.
Really no, it was cool.
I will say, in regards to Sid Vicious, and this kind of segues into our discussion tonight, Paul and I will be doing a Patreon series later on this year, maybe the beginning of 2025. We're gonna stack some episodes up and put them out on our Patreon in 2025. But we're doing a Legends of the Territories where we focus specifically on just the backstory of a particular wrestler. And I think it would be appropriate and respectful and honorable to do a Legends of the Territories on Sid Vicious, aka Sid Udy, and talk about his full body of work. This is different from Territory Marks, everybody, where, we discuss a match and kind of do the backstory and all this.
Yeah, this is a spinoff.
Yeah, this is a spinoff. This will be the special spinoff on our Patreon, on $2 late fees Patreon, patreon.com/$2 late fee. If you want to sign up now and be ahead of the crew, go for it. That would be great, but it supports the show. It supports us. But we're going to be doing Legends of the Territories, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
And as someone who is a part of the Patreon, your Patreon, you guys put out some great content, and I'm very much looking forward to this new show. My favorite thing about Territory Marks is, besides your all's enthusiasm, I really just like hearing about the history, and like this led to that, and this person kind of led to that person. I mean, it's the same stuff that I love about film history too, like what led to what. I love that kind of stuff, and so I love hearing wrestling history from your guys' perspective. So I really enjoy like a deep dive into like maybe just singular, people type of thing. I think that'd be really cool.
Well, you're going to get it, son. You're going to get it, and we're going to crush it in your honor. And we'll have you back to cover possibly some Larry the Axe Hennig matches as we go into that storied family there, even though it is, just, I think, up to third generation. Right. But, still a family absolutely worth mentioning and forever keeping in our memories without question. But there's so much rich history throughout all the various territories, which is why we're pulling out our shovels and, our hard hats and digging down deep and finding some gems, that really need to be shined back up again. And so we're happy to have you here, Corey. We're happy to have all the listeners here. And, time to get down to business, I'd say. Yeah.
I'd say let's do it.
Let's talk about some Jesse Ventura. Yeah.
Just to recap, everybody, because this is airing at the end of the month on $2 late fee and Territory Marks and Podcasting After Dark. We've covered Predator. We interviewed Richard Chavez, Poncho. We did a 80s Kids Unite on favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. We did a watch list with cast members from Predator that we spotlighted as well. And now here we are on Territory Marks.
You can't see this, but here's my Richard Chavez autograph with like a weird Sharpie. It's not the best, but you almost want to use a copper Sharpie. There's his signature up there, sort of right kind of by his face.
That's so cool. And Corey, I got you the same one.
Oh,
actually,
dude,
so.
thank you, man. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that.
Nicest people.
That's awesome.
Actually, and Paul, while you're here, for everybody, hopefully you listened to our Richard Chavez interview, which was fantastic. Paul is actually one of the main reasons why that Richard Chavez interview took place, because you'll hear in the backstory on the interview. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. But Richard Chavez was appearing. He made an appearance at a screening of Predator, and Paul invited me to go to it, and I had other plan. I couldn't make it that night, and I was actually out of town, and I was so bummed about it. I was so bummed about it because I wanted that opportunity. You'll hear it in the interview. But Paul, you were the one who's like, you got to go with me. You got to go, because I got the same email saying that he's going to be doing this thing. And anyways, here we are. At the end of the month, talking about Jesse the Body Ventura, the wrestler in the movie. We might as well talk about that guy.
Absolutely.
And because we're Territory Marks, because we're not going to pull from mainstream WWF in the 80s, and we might eventually down the road, but we wanted to dig deeper. So I started going into the history of Jesse the Body Ventura. And just really quickly, I just want to mention that he started his career, and this is kind of like a tease for Legends of the Territories because we're focusing on one guy. Cool. Ventura started his career in 1975. Actually, maybe even before that. He was a bodybuilder, but he was wrestling in the Pacific Northwest in the Central States Territory up in Portland, Oregon, which is where Corey is.
Is that where you and I had, remember we ate that one time and I think we were near...
It's a brewery.
Yeah, the brewery. And then I think, it was near where they used to wrestle, where the old place was.
So Paul, the arena that used to have the Portland Territory where the matches took place, Corey and I were eating lunch at a brewery next door to it.
Yeah.
That's where you're at. I remember I don't remember the name. If I heard it, it would come back to me. I'm sure it's obviously not the same business.
No, because it's like an amphitheater now. They put on performances and stuff.
But it still hosts events. It's still an event.
Yes, it's an event arena.
But Portland has a rich wrestling history, doesn't it?
Roddy Piper. I mean, it just right up the bat, but like absolutely, there's a whole list of who really either started their careers in Portland and or went through Portland. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Snuka, Playboy Buddy Rose. Obviously, Roddy Piper, Billy Jack Haynes, Matt Bourne, who went on to be Doink.
Doink the Clown,
Kurt Hennig had been through there. Dynamite Kid had been through there. I could go on and on and on. That we could actually we need to do a real deep dive into Portland wrestling in addition to some of our other favorite territories. Similar to how we've been doing with World Class this past season, but
Dallas.
Portland is rich for wrestling. Absolutely. It was the preeminent destination in the Northwest.
Okay.
And so, it was absolutely outstanding. I mean, and it still has a lot of talent today. I was up there, I want to say either earlier this year at some point doing a seminar, or it was actually maybe late last year. It all kind of starts to blur together, but Portland wrestling is still in pretty good hands, and it's climbing itself back up. So
nice. Well, we have a fun little local Eugene, Oregon crew that's called POW Pro Wrestling. That Podcasting After Dark has actually sponsored matches there and everything like that.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
I've been to a few matches. Took my nephew with me. He had a blast. It's such a good time. But Paul, Billy,
do they have a duck wrestler?
Huh?
A guy in a duck suit? Do they have a guy in a duck suit?
No, they didn't. But real quick,
Missing the ball.
what was Billy Jack? What did you say? Billy Jack Haynes? Was that a play on?
Yeah, Billy Jack Haynes.
Was that a play on the Billy Jack
and
character?
Actually,
Yes.
and his name was Jack Haynes, or was I think Jack Haynes might have been his shoe day, but either way, he adopted this Billy Jack.
Did he have the
Haynes
hat?
moniker? He had the hat, and Tom Laughlin actually threatened him with a lawsuit, or actually tried to sue him.
Of course he did.
Or he sent him a cease and desist, is what I meant to say, but. Because I think initially, actually, he was just coming out as Billy Jack.
Oh, and they had to add the last name.
Yeah, and so then when he added Billy Jack Haynes, because he was, I want to say he was with Vince at WWF as Billy Jack Haynes.
Yes.
I mean, he literally was one of the old, was it LJN, the big rubber, points of articulation 0. So yeah, that exists. So he was a pretty big player at the time, enough to get a figure at least, and yeah, just a really not forgotten but overlooked talent. But I think he had been in some legal trouble not too long ago or something.
Yeah, rest in peace to Billy Jack Haynes.
Yeah.
But very much so, to segue back to Jesse the Body Ventura, who, by the way, was born, his legal name is James George Janos. Janos?
Probably Janos, yeah.
Yeah. Born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1951.
Yeah, so I mean, Janos makes sense because there's a lot of Scandinavian background up in Minnesota up there. So yeah, that Janos definitely hits home.
And I want to shout out the fact that and we talked about this in Predator, he was in the Navy. He was a frogman,
yes.
UDT underwater demolition team, which later became the Navy SEALs, just like my dad. In fact, my dad was around the same time they were in service together. He was a little bit later on. I think John F. Kennedy was the one who actually changed the SEAL the program from the UDTs to the SEAL program. When he was president. So my dad was like in the beginning, 66 or 67. So shout out to all the veterans out there and thank you for your service. Very much appreciated.
With that, in addition to that, as who we spoke of just a few minutes prior, Richard Chavez. We might as well just all mention it now. While we're talking about it, even though Predator came out in 86 and the match we're going to be talking about here shortly, I believe was around 83.
83, yeah.
So even though, the match starts out, or the segment starts out with Jimmy Hart being on a phone call at the desk where Lance Russell is, at the famed, storied, play-by-play color guy for Memphis Wrestling. And Jimmy Hart gets put on speakerphone, and he's essentially Jesse Ventura is the hired gun by Jimmy Hart, who has had a feud with Jerry the King Lawler, who they actually went to the same high school. They might have gone at the same time, Jimmy Hart and Jerry Lawler. And so there's this long-standing feud over the years where and with Kaufman and just all this, and there was a bounty on Lawler's head, and he was bringing in all these big name threats from other territories and whatever, and Lawler was kind of going through them. So Ventura, at this point that we're catching up to everything, they're billing him as the California star, the San Diego guy, the movie star. And when I heard that, I was curious because I was thinking, what movies are they talking about?
Same.
Or Predator, right? I'm like, is it beach bopping, biceps, or like I don't know what movies he did before, so I wasn't sure what they were referring to.
Nothing. He did nothing.
There it is.
It was all
There
a
it is.
gimmick.
Yeah, because Zach,
there it is.
Paul, we talked about a show called Tag Team with Rowdy
That was
Piper,
after.
but that's 1991. So that was a long time after this. But we talked about that on TV Obscura. It's a really cool show, but now it's just built as a TV movie because they didn't make it past the pilot. But it was awesome, though. I loved it.
Yeah, I need to. There's nothing that can be found on it.
I think we had to watch.
YouTube?
We watched the
It's
whole
on
episode
YouTube.
on YouTube. Yeah, it's just on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, what happened before? Like, was that his persona? Because I even have it in my notes here when I was watching everything. I was like, I thought he was from Minnesota, and then they're calling him the San Diego Kid or something like that. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of
He had won
confused.
championships in Hawaii. He had won championships in California. So my guess is that, after he left the service, he found himself, or he ended up stationed out west or something and just stayed out there,
Okay.
I would imagine. Because,
Yeah.
this was, he said he started his career in 75.
So 74, I was wrong. It was 74. But then he went to the AWA in 82.
What year would Joe Weider have been really kind of exploding, that kind of late 60s, early 70s bodybuilding explosion, right? Muscle Beach, California.
Right.
So, I could easily see how, had he been going, or as he was going into amateur bodybuilding and becoming a bodybuilder, very much could find himself out in California, Muscle Beach. It's the craze. It's starting to be this big boom, you know what I mean? And hey, you got a great body. You look big. You're what was he, 6'4", 6'5"? What is he, 6'5", I think?
He's officially billed at 6'2", but I think he's got to be taller. He feels like he's taller than that.
I have like 3 notes here, and they're all like, he's so big. Like, I never knew that he was so tall, especially in the match that we're going to talk about. And the fact that the whole match is like that one camera angle, you can kind of really get a sense of scale on Jesse Ventura.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will continue to do our due diligence and find Jesse Ventura's real
right.
sacred IMDb. I'm not exactly sure what we're looking for, but before I forget, I'll just say, fast forwarding 3 years later, when he is doing Predator, I guess 2 years later when he was shooting it, I saw an interview clip with him where he was talking about, the fact that it was such a, it was a big studio picture and stuff like that. And so it was a high stress situation, and budget concerns were part of, already started to be on the minds of everybody. It was like, oh my God, we're going to be able to finish this thing, right? They'd already probably replaced Jean-Claude and already redone a lot of that, and had to, spend a lot of money on that went nowhere. So stress was so high that they were talking about having to possibly go back to ask the studio for more money. So they started cutting scenes out. And one of the scenes that got cut out was I Ain't Got Time to Bleed, that whole scene. And that scene is a really juicy scene for him and Richard Chavez,
Right.
who are the only 2 actual veterans on the cast.
Yeah.
So he's really kind of just like, oh, this sucks. Like, are you kidding? This is like one of some of my best character stuff for the film.
Right.
Even though I'm the first one out. So then he said he gets a call at 7 or 8 in the morning from production, and they said, Arnold's sick. The scene's back in. So they couldn't waste any time. So since they weren't going to be able to shoot Arnold that day because he was sick, they ended up putting that scene back in.
Yeah.
And that's how that scene got put back in the movie.
And we actually have Richard Chavez's take on that whole story, like his perspective in the interview. So
was that sort of accurate?
Sort of. It wasn't a phone call. It was a PA come running down the hill at them, and apparently
they're at the hotel.
Richard Chavez was like, oh, ready to shoot up and get to work, and Jesse was like, no, sit down for a second. Let them sweat for like a minute. You know what I mean?
We're gonna make them wait.
Yeah,
we're gonna make them wait.
Flexing his muscles a little bit,
We're
but
gonna flex this.
Oh, so funny.
but it is one of my favorite scenes in that movie. I think it's one of the scenes that solidified my love for the character Blain and for Poncho. It was such a cool scene.
Poncho's the last to get taken out, so you actually have the veterans as the first and the last to get.
Yeah.
taken out.
Yeah, no, they had such a great vibe together, and I know like Mac and Blain were supposed to be the friends, but you could tell that they were such a close knit team. Like on the helicopter, when he offers Pancho the dip, Pancho's like "fuck you," get that, but you could tell that they're all friendly.
Jesse Ventura, I will say, for the two films that stand out the most to me, this being one of them, the other being Running Man.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Abraxas.
I thought you were going to say Abraxas too.
No, I mean, come on, Captain Freedom. Yeah.
I'm joking.
He can make any dialogue quotable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like a living meme at this point. So he's great. And that line or that scene you're talking about with the offering the chew and everything.
This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me. I mean, me and my friends would quote that constantly. You know what I mean? Constantly.
The nasty habit.
This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me.
Let me ring it back to the ring and just say, when he first started out his career in 74 as a wrestler, he took Gorgeous George's old motto, and I believe, Paul, you might need to use this when you're a heel. He would wear it on a t-shirt. It said, "Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat." That's a great motto. That was that's when he started out his career. And,
So did he start out as a heel, Zach?
Yeah, he did, and he had a really good run in Portland. He won the tag titles there as well, and like you said, Paul, in Hawaii, he won some titles. But then he came to the AWA in 1979 and started tagging with Adrian Adonis, which I think, Corey, you'll probably know Adrian Adonis from his WWF days when he was overweight. But at the time...
Yeah, I know who he is.
When he was with they were called the East-West Connection, and they were a solid team. In fact, they held the tag titles for over a year, or about almost a year, losing to the High Flyers, our good buddy Greg Gagne and Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, later that year in 1980. But as a solo wrestler, he didn't have as much of a run as he did as a tag team wrestler. So it's kind of more of a novelty that he wrestles solo, like he's going to be doing against Jerry Lawler in 83, because in 83, he comes down to Memphis from AWA and he challenges Jerry the King Lawler, the King of Memphis, for the Southern Heavyweight Championship title, which was an AWA title. And like you said, Paul, Lance Russell, who's at the on the mic talking to Jimmy Hart, and on the phone is Jesse the Body Ventura talking about wanting to come down there, and cuts a hilarious promo, by the way.
Great promo, great heel promo, coming there to shut you up and start, just a real threatening, kind of menacing promo.
This is at the request, by the way, of Jimmy Hart that we made this phone call, and we called one of the international stars of wrestling, a big 6'4", 265-pound Jesse the Body Ventura. Jesse, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, wait just a second. Jimmy Hart's got something to say to you. Here, Jim.
Jesse!
Yeah.
We can't wait, man, for you to get down here, baby. Everybody's talking about you. Everybody knows what a superstar in professional wrestling you really are, what movies you've been in, who you've dated in all the star fields in California. They call you Mr. San Diego. I want you to talk to the people here right on TV, if you would.
Let me tell you people something. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is supposed to be known for having the king of rock, Elvis Presley. Well, let me tell you, I'm personal friends with the real king of rock, and that's Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. I'm coming down there for one reason, and that is to get Jerry, the so-called King Lawler. He built up his reputation whipping on a little dude by the name of Andy Kaufman. And I personally found out after he whipped Andy Kaufman, he wanted a match with Henny Youngman. Now that's really time, Jerry Lawler. The dude's only 65 years old and plays a violin. But let me tell you something, Lawler. I don't play no violin. I'm 6'4", 270 pounds, 21.5-inch arms, 55-inch chest, and the most beautiful man in wrestling today. I've wrestled WWF champion Bob Backlund to a 1-hour draw. I've swamped the ring with Nick Bockwinkel, AWA champion. I'm probably the baddest dude in wrestling today. I've paintbrushed the incredible Hulk Hogan, who likes to whip on little dudes like Rocky Balboa. So I'm custom made, Jerry Lawler, for whipping on guys that like to beat up little men in wrestling. So Jerry the King Lawler, you prepare yourself, boy. Because Jesse the Body's coming in from San Diego, California, and I'm not traveling all the way to no redneck town like Memphis, Tennessee, in front of all them redneck stump jumpers down there. I'm bringing a little class in with me. Memphis, Tennessee, and the rest of Southern Wrestling, you get ready, because you're now listening to the new Southern Heavyweight Champion of the world. I'm predicting that already, Jack.
So a little bit of the backstory here is that the first time Jesse came in, I want to say he lost to Lawler, and as a part of that stipulation, Jimmy Hart had to wear the San Diego chicken suit, which I imagine is the baseball mascot. Is that the Padres?
Padres, yeah, the Padres, yep.
Yeah, so that ended up being kind of a little bit of a rib. It's funny because you look years later and it's a kind of almost like a ripoff that Vince ended up taking and developing into the gobbledygook.
Oh, the gobbledygooker, yeah.
That's a gobbledygook tongue twister. But nonetheless, it was kind of this haha gag backfired onto Jimmy Hart, and part of the Kaufman stuff. Lawler started, because a lot of that gets kind of condensed into what we've known as through, Man on the Moon and, the Letterman appearance and stuff like that. But like they were taking this show on the road, and Kaufman, from what I understand, was trying to go as far as he could with it, to the point where it kind of burnt out his Hollywood stuff for a time being, because,
right.
People were like, this guy's like, he's something wrong with him, and so I don't know. I was trying to do some I can't imagine Kaufman wouldn't have been in a chicken suit at some point. It seems like something he would have done.
They mentioned it in the commentary, mentioned something about Kaufman previously in the chicken suit. It kind of went past me, and I was wondering if, maybe that he was in it before, maybe.
Tightening that all into this segment and this match that we're going to cover here, there is a San Diego chicken at ringside. The general idea is that it's Jimmy Hart. We're going to see how that plays in here a little bit later. But everyone in the building had every reason to believe that Jimmy Hart is in this chicken suit because he had been in it as part of part of the stipulation when Ventura lost to Lawler. And Lawler maintained that, what was it, the Southern States Championship or the Southern Heavyweight title?
Yeah, Southern Heavyweight title.
It could have been Bill Dundee. It could have been a number of people, but you look at the body frame and it's pretty. The chicken didn't eat too well.
No, pretty lanky and kind of tall.
Yeah, it was a no range chicken.
Yeah, yeah, and it is the San Diego chicken. It's the San Diego Padres mascot, or was very famous down there. And Paul, really quickly, just we should educate Corey on Lance Russell, because Lance Russell was the voice of Memphis wrestling. He, just like Jim Ross was the voice of, NWA back in the day and then later WWF, Lance Russell was the king of commentary down there.
Okay. And then, so just so everyone knows, Zach just basically sent the clip. It has that Jimmy Hart part at the beginning on the phone, and then it goes into the match.
Going in the Southern Heavyweight Championship match. No time, no disqualification. One falls, sanctioned AWA title at stake. The King facing the camera. And the challenger, the big heavyweight out of San Diego, California, Jesse the Body Ventura. Jimmy Hart at ringside, hassling the referee from the very opening moment.
It goes straight to the match, and there's no introductions.
Well, my question, just for a little background for if there's any listeners out there that's sort of on my level. So I had no indication, but I can only assume that Lawler was the face of the match and Ventura was still the heel at this point. Was he still a heel?
Lawler is, I would say, I'm trying to think of when he was a heel, if he could be a heel in Memphis. Just wasn't happening.
Okay, yeah.
The famous Mid-South Coliseum, which isn't too far from the Presley estate. And what was the name of that amusement park right there? Liberty Land, maybe. But yeah, this is in the famous Mid-South Coliseum. And again, these hired guns, they're coming in. This feud lasted for years between Jimmy Hart and Lawler, and it would cool off for a bit. Then it would come back, and Jimmy Hart would come back and take his opportunity as a true heel. And so, yes, Ventura is very much he ran down Memphis. He talked crap about the city of Memphis. Not as bad as Kaufman, but in his own. We're in Hollywood. We're gold. We're muscles. We're beautiful people out there. You're a bunch of hillbillies. Blah 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 blah. So he's very much a heel.
Yeah, I should have picked up on that. Right, I should have picked up on those heel things.
Yeah, and Lawler is a huge baseball fan.
Okay.
And a big softball player too. But as was Sid, who we spoke about earlier. Sid was a huge softball player.
That's right.
But that's why I was trying to look, and I was like, that's not the Cleveland Indians, I think, because I think that's who Lawler's favorite team of all time is. He's like a diehard Cleveland Indians fan. I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, but nonetheless, this is a really cool match. It has a lot of really neat atmosphere. Ventura clearly has the size advantage here.
Oh, yeah.
And what I like about this match is that in traditional professional wrestling, between a heel and a face, the baby face isn't the first one to throw a punch. You know what I mean? That's when punches were still respected. They were kind of a part of some of the rule structure here. How you have to keep kind of an open fist. You can't, keep a tight clenched fist, which still is a little confusing to me over the years. But nonetheless, so in this match, as we start off, you're thinking, okay, well, Ventura has the massive size advantage. Lawler's able to kind of use some momentum and turn him into the corner the first two attempts and catches a little rabbit punch. It's kind of like kind of trying to take some bark off the tree before you start chopping away at it, and and I just thought that's really kind of a fresh little beginning. And the crowd's all about it because it's like, yeah, Lawler got the first lick. Yeah, he got the second lick too. And then Jesse Ventura's not going to fall for that the third time. Turns it around, slows things down, throws the big wild one. Lawler ducks, hits him with the third one. Bam! You know what I mean? So he's showing Ventura right off the bat that, you might be bigger and stronger, but, I'm the king. I got tricks up my sleeve.
Yeah.
And we should also point out, too, this is a no DQ, no time limit match.
Thank you.
Everything goes.
Thank you. And famous Memphis wrestling referee Jerry Calhoun is the one in the middle, between these two behemoths. And, obviously there's a moment here where Lawler bumps Ventura out. I'm trying to remember exactly what that point was because I think it was either before this. Ventura gets a few chokes in and a knee, but it might be right after this. But there's a moment earlier on. I'm blanking on what Lawler hit Ventura with. It might have just been a big punch.
Yeah.
He had great punches, Lawler. He always has. He's always had tremendous punches. Most of the Tennessee wrestlers have outstanding punches. And I mean, Jeff Jarrett's another classic reference that's still throwing better punches than 99% of the industry today. So, yeah, I'm not
on the flip side of that, Paul, I was very much more impressed by Lawler's selling of the hits that Ventura was landing on him. I thought he sold the hits just as well as he, dished them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Selling is what will ultimately drive a babyface into getting over. If they sell well, if they sell believably, if they believe what they sell, if they sell what they believe, it goes both ways. If without selling, none of these moves matter, and that's one of the things we love about covering these matches on Territory Marks is that we really get to highlight and dust off the times when this was as real to these performers and wrestlers and fans as it was going to get. This is as real as it gets. So a punch is a punch. You're not seeing people tag somebody with 10, 15 punches in a row just for them to reverse them. And it's kind of like,
Right.
who's still standing from 10 punches in a row?
Right.
So the punch really meant something. And Lawler was one of the absolute best at it, which is why the beginning of his offense is really just punches. But you're absolutely right on his selling. One of my favorite moments, and I know I'm talking a lot about this, but upon more watching or more viewings of it, I really came to really love and appreciate this match so much more because, for what he is as an athlete and a character, Jesse Ventura was a pretty limited wrestler.
Yeah,
it's
pretty obvious.
It is. Yeah. And so it's neat when you're able to...
It's a very nice way to put that, by the way.
Well, I don't think he was delusional by any means. I think he knew what he did well, and he worked to his strengths, and he didn't try to do shit he didn't know how to do.
Right.
Smart. And he didn't. Yeah, exactly. And so the story's a very easy one to tell,
right?
Because you're not sitting here with a gazillion, loopholes and twists and turns. Like, it's not some Shyamalan bullshit like you get today. That's full of plot holes and nothing makes sense, and it's rubbish, right?
Right.
So we're talking about, someone who was brought in. These guys are both legends in their own right, even though I'd say Lawler is far, far more of a professional wrestling legend than Jesse the Body Ventura, who I think a lot of people would mostly remember as a commentator once he had already retired, right?
He retired in 86. Yeah.
He retired in 86. Okay, so that's 3 years. After his wrestling career lasted 12 years,
12
roughly?
Years. Yeah.
Give or take?
Yeah.
So I've already doubled that. I'm doubling that now. But I was never in the Navy. I was never in the Navy or living in Mexico.
Wait a minute. If you weren't affected by aliens down in Mexico, where I have a solar powered home, you wouldn't know what the hell I'm talking about. So get back to the goddamn match.
So how long before this match? How long was Lawler been wrestling for, and how long has Jesse Ventura been wrestling for up till this match right here? I'm asking in general.
This would have been Ventura's 9th year, possibly. Okay. But I don't think he would have had as many reps. And I don't I'm trying to think of when Lawler started. I feel like it was early 70s.
Lawler's career actually started in 1970. And
oh, wow.
And so and Corey, to paint a picture, Ventura is like, in a way, would you agree, Paul? He's like kind of a hot new face to come in and take on the veteran,
Absolutely.
So at this, and the veteran being, Lawler is Ric Flair to Memphis. He's Hulk Hogan to Memphis.
Sure.
He's the guy that he's the faceplate of the company.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Hart, who you probably know from being in WWF with the megaphone.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's funny because the whole bit at the beginning with Jimmy Hart calling on the phone with Jesse Ventura, I know that they said Jimmy Hart, but I'm watching the video and my brain doesn't even put it together that it's the Jimmy Hart that I know. And I'm not criticizing because I can't pretend that I would be able to do this job either, but he kind of stumbles on his words a little bit. And I kind of felt he wasn't I just felt like he wasn't the mouth from the South that I knew as a kid.
Yeah. Funny enough, Jimmy Hart, if I'm not mistaken, has one or several gold records.
Yes.
As a recording artist. Yeah.
He was a recording artist. Yeah.
He was a recording artist. He was responsible for the golden era of WWF. Predominantly, a majority of those theme songs were done by Jimmy Hart. So he is a multifaceted individual who's one of the sweetest people you could ever meet.
He was in a band called the Gentrys in 1965. He had a million selling record in 1965 with the song "Keep On Dancing." I'm going to play a little clip of that right now, actually.
I keep on dancing, boy. Don't you wanna turn the jerk right now? Shake it, baby. Come on and show me how you work.
Love it. So he's kind of the Phil Spector of wrestling. No, I'm kidding.
Don't say Phil Deathstalker.
Yeah, dude. That's small world, Jack. Small world.
But it's cool that Lawler stood out to you, Corey, because he is the veteran. He is the more talented individual by far, and he's able to work around Ventura's limitations while still making him look like a massive threat.
Yeah,
right?
and it was that first hit that Ventura landed that I was like, whoa, like right away I was like, oh, was that real? Like, and that's what you want. Like, you want me to think like, was that a real hit? And that was right away I could tell. Again, I'm not going to, at all pretend I could do any of this, but I could tell the skill level, or at least just the experience was there with Lawler versus Ventura.
Early on in this match, too, Ventura has Lawler on the ground and he has his foot on him and he's pushing his foot into Lawler's throat. And Lawler's selling it really well.
Yeah.
But Ventura is a 265-pound dude on top of him, at least 6'2" with the heel 6'4", and and like it's insane the kind of pressure he's putting on his throat.
He gets a lot of really good heat as a big man. He uses real basic stuff, but he's focused. He gets a cheap shot to the gut with the knee. He does some choking in the corner. He rakes King Lawler's eyes across the ropes. He gets him down on the ground. He puts his foot on his throat. He uses the ropes for leverage.
Right.
Little man Jerry Calhoun, poor guy, is sitting here trying to pull him off of him. My favorite bump of this entire match is from Lawler, and it's what sends them outside, and it's a punch that Ventura catches Lawler with, where Lawler takes the backwards 360 over the top rope to the floor. And this is back when mats on the floor was unheard of. This is the concrete floor.
I was going to say, I don't think there's a mat there at all. I think that is straight concrete right there.
The only mats that are there are dudes named Matt.
Dudes named Matt.
Yeah. So, Lawler taking a backwards 360 over the top rope to the floor, that alone means that, he came to play, but he's willing to do a lot to help put this guy over as a threat in the territory. And so we end up on the floor. Ventura is taking his time, great as a heel, getting that heat. They get down into the ground where he ends up sending Lawler into the pole, which in a lot of territories is a hospitalization angle, but they work it pretty awesome here because Lawler kind of ends up taking it a bit more to the shoulder, so there's really no need for him to get color. And instead of just smothering him, Ventura gets back in the ring, raises the hands. He's in control, massive heat, right? That's what we want from our heels, to relish the booze, not sit here trying to do a bunch of cool shit, right? Like it was what kind of the problem with what you see today. The bad guys are doing cooler shit than the good guys, and the fans are confused who to cheer for.
Right.
So Ventura is in control here throughout, and Lawler keeps, trying to get back up, and he's knocking him down, and the chicken's not really doing much. You kind of catch him at the bottom of your screen.
He's just hopping around.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell is that down there?
And then, Ventura comes back out, and he's in control. He grabs a nice side headlock on Lawler on the floor, but he's a little too cocky, and Lawler rifles him off. Ventura takes the pole. Bam, right? Eye for an eye.
Cuts him open, too, I think.
Yeah. Did he get some color on that?
He did have color by the end of the match. He had some color on his face.
That's it. Okay, it was hard to tell. Mind you, again, this footage is from '83.
Yeah, it's grainy, and like Corey said, it's a single camera shot, so it's hard to see.
It's really just a hard cam shot. That's all we have.
Yeah.
It's just like a big, wide establishing shot with slight zooms, if that.
Right.
So then when we end up back in the ring, I'm glad you pointed out the no DQ part, because there's a part where the chicken distracts Lawler on the outside. Correct me if I'm missing something here, Zach. but or Corey, please. But is this where Lawler then just goes to get the chair? He's
Yes.
like, he goes and gets the big folding chair.
A big,
And he
legit, heavy folding chair.
Oh yeah, like the thick cushion on the thick metal seat. You know what I mean? That's probably pretty heavy too. You know, I've met Lawler several times when we worked in the company together, even though he was on Raw for most of the time. Even though the few matches where I have had King Lawler's commentary over my matches are some of the most special sound bites in my head.
That's cool.
You know, it's really cool. But he nails Ventura with the chair right there in front of Jerry Calhoun, who's come out onto the floor to kind of separate things. Now, I was sitting here at first because I had missed initially the no DQ deal. I was like, they're really kind of letting him go in this match. Then he throws him in, and I believe this is where Ventura hits Lawler in the nuts, low blow right in front of Jerry Calhoun. And again, I'm like, wait a minute.
Legal.
Where are the rules here, you know?
There are no rules.
There are no rules. But the coolest thing is that Lawler is such a king. He's such a badass, tough babyface that he gets hit in the nuts and it pisses him off, right? Yeah. Ventura must have had bad aim or Lawler must have some small nuts. I'm not sure which, but I'd go with the bad aim, right?
Sure.
I'm going to go because Lawler's the man.
Yeah.
So he turns around, he fires up. I think he might even pull his one strap down, but he starts rocking and rolling. And my second favorite sell of this match, which is a little goofy, but he gets Ventura over to the corner. Big King Lawler punch, bam. Ventura spins around 360. Another punch. Ventura spins around again. He like pirouettes on the cell. Yeah. It's beautiful.
He starts to try to hit the pile driver on Ventura.
Yes, he does hit it. Okay, no, so he's working him in the corner. Bam, pirouette punch, pirouette sell. Bam, another one. Hits him again, grabs the side headlock, and Ventura shoves him off, and he goes flying right into Jerry Calhoun. Bam.
Right. Ref bump.
He takes a pretty solid bump into the ropes and then falls out. In which case, Lawler kind of stumbles down and falls. And here comes Ventura with a big jumping elbow drop in which Lawler moves. Great action right there. Bam, gets up. That's where he hits the pile driver.
That pile driver was amazing. For a second, you think he's not going to be able to do it, and then he does it. And even on a small little iPhone, I'm like, fuck yeah, I mean, dude, and he's so big. Ventura is so big.
He's huge. I wouldn't be surprised if he was about 275 here. But the pile driver is Lawler's finishing move. It's what hospitalized Andy Kaufman, put him in the neck brace. You're right. Ventura is so big that it was really impressive to see Lawler get him up for that pile driver. But Lawler typically would jump with the pile driver. So he would get a good 3-4 feet under him and then come down and spike him. So he gets kind of a slight hop. I mean, he doesn't get much air. But
it's not 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah. Sitting there, he's got the cover with no ref. He turns, he looks, tries to get Calhoun awakened here. I believe this is I know the finish here, but I'm trying to think of what happened here. There's another, I think, near fall, isn't there? The chicken hops up here, and I want to say this is where Lawler comes and blasts the chicken.
Yes.
And then we get, I want to say, another near fall, because as he's with the chicken, no, he doesn't hit the chicken. He grabs the chicken. Everyone's like, mess up Jimmy Hart, pluck him. You know what I mean? Pull that little rascal into the ring, give him his due. Here comes Ventura barreling down, misdirection. Lawler gets out of the way, nails Jimmy Hart off the apron, right in the chicken suit. Huge pop. There we get, I think, another near fall right there. I'm trying to remember what he hit him with. It might have been just a big punch, I think. He covers him again. Nothing. Then we see Jimmy Hart running, the actual Jimmy Hart running down, hop up on the apron. Lawler's like, what the, right? Runs to him, grabs him. Might hit him, I can't quite remember, but in the meantime, Ventura's pulling out the chain, wraps it around his fist. Lawler turns around, blasts him. Jerry Calhoun, unfortunately, conveniently timed him coming in.
Well, doesn't the chicken like sort of bring him in, like pick up Calhoun and bring him in? The chicken, doesn't he do that?
Yes, he does. Thank you. That's what it was, because I was hoping for not a poorly yet conveniently timed resurgence from the referee. You're absolutely right. The chicken does go around, throw Jerry Calhoun back into the ring. He makes the 3 count, and Lawler kind of instinctually kicks out right after the 3, but it's too late. The damage has been done. The numbers game. The king has been unseated.
Pushed back in by whoever is in that chicken suit, and Lawler just lost the Southern Heavyweight title back to Jesse Ventura. 9:06, the winner, Jesse Ventura, regains the Southern Heavyweight title in a bizarre finish that saw Jimmy Hart once again change places with somebody else. Last time it was Andy Kaufman. This time I don't know who, but the result is the same. Ventura wins it and regains the Southern.
Ventura wins the AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship against Jerry the King Lawler.
Yeah, and for me, like, you know, we mentioned that the match is this like one, you know, main camera. So for me, that actually was helpful because I could understand everything. I could see everything. Although it was kind of weird because I saw another camera guy around. I was curious why they didn't cut to him at all. But over time, I was like, you know what? I kind of liked having that, just that one camera shot, because I could follow everything that was happening. And everything you mentioned, Paul, was very exciting because it's not a slobber knocker match. Like, it's not like big blow, big blow, big blow. I feel like there's more finesse to it than I kind of thought at first, like sort of how the match started. I thought it was just going to be sort of a slobber knocker, but I became very impressed. Honestly, I was more impressed with Lawler and his abilities than Ventura when I was watching it. And this is, you know, one of the few matches I've seen of Lawler, probably the only match I've ever seen of Ventura. Wasn't really expecting anything from Ventura because I know him more from the movies. But man, I popped hard for when Lawler pile drived Ventura and everything. I was like, that's just, I mean, I don't care what you say. That is an impressive human feat right there to pick that guy up and drop him, you know?
Absolutely. And you're right. I remember the beginning portion of it after the quick got you first punches from Lawler. He ends up going high-low on Ventura and leg picking him twice. Yeah. And the thing I liked about that little moment was, if you watch wrestling today, everyone goes down so easily. If you tap the back of somebody's leg, they end up just falling down. It's ridiculous, right? So Ventura goes down, but it's not like he just cleanly just snaps back because it's what he's supposed to do. I mean, it's a bit of a struggle, but it's a bit of I got the big man down, got the advantage, ankle pick kind of thing. And even just kind of that slow fall that Ventura falls into, knowing that he's now on his back, he's exactly where he doesn't want to be. The second time that happens, that's where Ventura powders out at the beginning to kind of take a walk for a second, reassess his attack. So really cool strategic match from Lawler here. Maybe not his most exciting wrestling match, the tons of drama and everything, but superbly executed by the heels. Great heat, great selling from the babyface. Great selling from Ventura as well, because he could have easily come in there and just try to be a strong, big guy. I'm not going to sell for you. But he knew how to do business, you know what I mean? And it was great.
Well, and it should be mentioned that the match was only about 10 minutes long.
9 minutes and 6 seconds.
Yeah, so it was very tight, But my question to you guys, is that like a normal runtime for a match of sort of these two bigger kind of guys like this?
I mean, for a title match, not necessarily.
It's kind of short, right?
But if someone has shortcomings like Ventura might, where he's not, then you're going to have a shorter match. I mean,
look at the length of matches that Goldberg had. Remember how Goldberg had that streak where he was just mowing through people in WCW, late 90s? That's why. That's a huge part of why. It's like this guy can Ultimate Warrior, same thing, right? Greatest Ultimate Warrior match ever was against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 7. So, and that went a bit of time.
It did.
That went a little bit of time.
It did, and they touted. I mean, Ventura touts himself saying, or not. Maybe it was Lance Russell or Jimmy Hart in the beginning. Ventura went to a time limit draw against Nick Bockwinkel, the AWA World Heavyweight Champion at the time. So for Ventura to go, 60 minutes, Paul, potentially?
I want to see that match.
I know. I was like, I would have pulled that, but it would have been a lot. But this felt hotter to me only from that standpoint that these guys, there was so much heat for Ventura coming into this. And I want to button this a little bit by saying, in a I think it's a 2012 shoot interview that Ventura did. He talked about his relationship with Jerry Lawler and how he had a really good relationship with Lawler, really appreciated Lawler as a businessman in Memphis and how he did him right. He always treated him really well.
Cool.
And he also noted that he has the distinction of never being beaten by Lawler because Ventura's daughter was really sick and he had to go care for her. And he's like, look, he had to go back for a rematch against Lawler, but he's like, I can't. I got to go see my daughter. And Lawler was totally cool with it. And Ventura says, quote, he FedExed the title back to Lawler. So Lawler reclaimed the belt, but he never got pinned. Ventura never got beat for that belt.
Wow.
And he appreciated the fact that Lawler, did him right by being cool with the fact that he had to go care for his daughter and all that stuff. So
that story made me like Lawler a lot more. Not that I didn't, but I was like, that's cool, And then in both interviews, Zach, that you sent over, the one from Predator as well, Ventura's talking about like his kids and everything. So it seems to be he's pretty like active in their lives, at least from what I can tell, which is really nice too.
Sure.
I appreciate that about Ventura. I don't know the guy, but based on what the stories I've heard and everything, I really appreciate he seems to be someone who, like in Bruno Sammartino kind of way, he like looks out for the guys and he wants the wrestlers, he wants the best for the wrestlers in the business, unlike other people who won't mention.
That's the rumor, right? That's the big rumor and why and how Hulk Hogan exploded to become the face of the company in the 80s, the late 80s, was the rumor going around was that Jesse Ventura was walking around trying to kind of build a bit of a, I don't know if it's a mutiny or if that's the right word. But
union. I think he was trying to make a union.
He was trying to establish a union, and Hogan stooged him off. And I think Vince saw that, I've got my company guy now, and kept snapping the rockets to him. So,
I mean, look, I got to say, out of all these guys that you see on the screen, Paul's excluded, obviously, being a wrestler and an actor. We won't talk about Paul's amazing performances in his roles. So we'll talk about these like other dudes from the 80s. Ventura is one hell of an actor. And, the interview that he did on that behind the scenes for Predator, I thought was really heartwarming too. It just like how I really want to work with De Niro, that's my goal. And I really appreciate that. Side note, did you know he was in Ricochet with Denzel Washington? He played a character named Chulaski.
No.
I never saw Ricochet all the way through. I remember trying to watch it many times and it always was hard for me to watch. But now I kind of want to go back and watch it because of the body.
Yeah, I would love to. I think Ventura could have, he had some iconic roles. I see him as kind of like playing kind of like a Patrick Kilpatrick kind of character.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah. So I think a lot of those roles, I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Kilpatrick beat him out for some of these. Who's to say, right? Even though I think this Ventura was a bigger name and a more bankable, visible star, especially after Predator. But man, they must have been in a similar category.
They probably went for the same roles.
I had him on $2 late fee, and we talked about Jean-Claude Van Damme and Death Warrant because he was in that movie.
Yeah, man, right?
Yeah, he's actually in the middle of making a movie right now about the underwater demolition team, the Frogmen. So, and we talked extensively about that in the interview because he's in the process of making this movie, and which is going to honor people like Jesse Ventura
and your dad.
Sure.
Yeah, my dad. Of course, my dad. Shout out to my dad always.
Pops. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So this match took place in 83. We're recording this in September, right? So I pulled two little facts that I had to share with you guys because the first one, I was like, how perfect is this? In September of 83, Arnold Schwarzenegger was sworn in as a citizen of the United States.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
So he got a citizenship in 83, September of 83.
That's awesome.
Right. And then the flip side to that is in September of 83.
He was deported from Austria?
He was, no. On MTV, to promote their upcoming album, Lick It Up, Kiss revealed themselves for the first time without makeup.
This is a really big moment. After 10 years together, exclusively here on MTV this evening, we're going to see Kiss without their makeup for the very first time. Vinnie Vincent, lead guitarist and co-writer of many of the songs on the current Kiss album. Eric Carr, drummer, has been with the band since 1979. And Kiss is, by the way, the very first band that Eric has ever been with. Paul Stanley, rhythm guitarist and lead vocalist. Paul is a co-founder of the group. Gene Simmons, bass, also co-founder of Kiss. He is the fire-breathing, blood-spitting monster of Kiss.
And everyone screamed and said, "Put your makeup back on!"
Yeah. They were like, Ragnar! When was Never Too Young to Die?
It was right after this, soon after this, because Never Too Young to
so
Die
you're
came.
Comfortable without the paint then at this point.
Yes, so Runaway, Never Too Young to Die.
It's like murderous hermaphrodite.
Wanted Dead or Alive. Yeah, if y'all.
I don't have to wear the makeup, do I? You can wear some makeup, but not the face paint if you don't mind. Oh, okay, I love it.
Oh my god, and also, normally at the end of these episodes, I play a song that connects to something. So I was going to play some Kiss, right? But then Jesse Ventura has a song called "The Body Rules."
Awesome.
This is the last episode of the crossover series of Podcasting After Dark, $2 late fee and territory marks. And for those of you that have never heard of Podcasting After Dark, maybe you're just fans of territory marks, and you like listening to Corey's voice because it's a great voice to listen to, go check Corey and I out on Podcasting After Dark and our feed. We break down movies scene by scene. We do a lot of other fun content, TV Obscura on there. Of course, 80s Kids Unite, which Paul, Corey, and I are all night boys. And of course, here on the territories, Corey, you are officially a part of the territories.
Oh man, I love it. I love coming on. I
like Flint.
I love this show, and I love coming on. Whenever you guys have me, I hope I can bring anything to the table. This is probably the show I'm usually the most nervous about being on because I'm not, confident in my knowledge of wrestling. But I very much enjoy talking to the both of you. Night Boys, baby. I love it. I love it. So, and thank you for educating me, guys. It's like I said, it's a great show, and it's a show that I love, and I can't wait for the Patreon content.
Thanks, Crusher. That's very kind of you, brother. You're welcome back anytime, man. And you don't have to have vast knowledge of any of that stuff. That's what we pretend to be here for. But no, whatever memory my mush brain can remember, but. No, the beautiful thing is that if it makes you feel something and you can find yourself being engaged in the story, man, that's good enough because that means the work did what it was supposed to do. It made you feel something. You had a reaction, you had an emotional response to two guys going out there and telling a story with their bodies and beating the tar out of each other and some villainry at the end, and it's just fight for another day, King Lawler, fight for another day.
Well, I mean, this was a great match. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it, even though it was only 10 minutes long, I feel like pound for pound, it went the distance, you know what I mean? And then just, I think the icing on the cake was that Jerry Lawler pile driving, Jesse Ventura was just unreal. Just an unbelievable feat of human strength, and I loved it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to start working on my pile drivers then so I can impress you.
You always impress me, buddy.
It's only appropriate you're talking about two bodies going back and forth, because I hope we paid a proper tribute to the body, Jesse Ventura, and his.
Should we ask who has the best Ventura impression? Because one of my absolute best friends in the world, Karrion Kross, he does a great impression, but man, Will Sasso's is pretty.
Will Sasso's is great. I mean, look, you gotta make sure you get the Minnesota down there.
Yeah, he enunciates really well. No, that went a little Hulk. It went
that little macho.
Yeah,
that
little macho. Went a little macho on it. My bad.
That's right.
My two brothers from illegitimate mothers and all over the place, and I love you guys.
Are you calling our moms rats from the territory? What the hell?
Look, guys, for those all you territory fans, check out patreon.com/$2 late fee, and we're going to be launching that Patreon series soon. Oh, and bonus episode at the end of this month as well. Bill Mercer. Paul and I will be releasing that interview that we did with legendary Bill Mercer and Mark Lawrence. Actually, Mark Lawrence and Paul and I are going to be in studio around the time that this episode is getting released. It's crazy. Just all the territory stuff is coming into the fold. So Bill Mercer sat down with Paul and I, and courtesy of Mark Lawrence, you'll hear that interview coming up very soon as well. We should have Corey say some last words. Take us out on the road to the territories. What do you want to say, Corey?
Well, you're going to... hold on, brother.
Give us our union, Terry.
I hope everyone had a blast with this month of Predator, and I hope to catch you all on the territory side.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Play us out, body.
I got the power. I got the speed. This body rules in the ring. It's my machine. It's my castle. It's my weapon. When I wrestle, I got the hands. I got the moves. I got the ways to get to you. You want trouble? You'll be sorry if you mess with this body. I got the body. The body moves. I got the body. I got the body. The body moves tonight.
I don't want to come out here and blow my own horn. I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot, toot.
Thanks again for listening to Territory Marks. If you like what you hear, then consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're at it, head on over to our Patreon too. The link is in our show notes.
And if you want more 80s nostalgia, go check out my tag partner Zach and our Terry Bam Bam of Ballyhoo, Dustin, over at $2latefee.com, where the faces always win, even in the territories.
After he had loaded the boot, get rid of the load.
Oh, listen, I just wanted to say goodbye and remind you that the good guys always win, even in the 80s.